Welcome back to The Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and there's a moment some of us know all too well. The day you realize the battle just isn't overseas or on the wire, it's right here at home. For Tom Sauer, it was losing his father to addiction that pulled the pin on his sense of mission. After years as a Navy EOD officer, Tom pivoted from defusing bombs to taking on an even more relentless enemy, the mental health and addiction crisis gutting our veteran community. He's not just talking, he's out there building places like Miramar Health where other vets can get real, trauma-informed help from people who've been through the fire themselves. This one's for you if you felt like you're out of options, if you watched your brothers and sisters fall through the cracks, or if you're done being handed a pamphlet and told to move along. Tom's here because he knows the cost when the system fails and what it takes to fight back for your life and your family. So let's get into it. Tom, brother, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on, Adam.
Yeah, of course. First question for everybody, man. Where'd you grow up and what inspired you to join the Navy?
So I grew up mostly in Southern California, Los Angeles area. And then when my parents got divorced, my mom got a job up in Seattle. So I did junior high and high school up there.
I'm sorry.
And then I know. I mean, honestly, if I didn't have family up there, I'd never go back.
Yeah.
And then what got me to join really was, and it's interesting though too, because there's a tie-in to what I did later in life there. So, so right before, about 5 days before I graduated from high school and about 3 weeks before I left for the Marines, my dad died of a meth overdose. So he was out in the desert in California, think Breaking Bad, that kind of stuff. And obviously that really impacted me. He struggled his whole life with addiction and mental health issues. He was not a veteran himself. But that was something that really impacted me. So when I joined, I could tell that there was some sort of there was a sense of belonging, camaraderie that really appealed to me. I felt that I wasn't a very disciplined person, at that time when I was young. I was kind of out of shape, kind of listless. I wasn't a bad kid. I never got in really any trouble or anything like that. Just wasn't doing a whole lot. And to me, the idea of the excitement, the adventure, the sense of belonging, the camaraderie of the Marine Corps, because I started in the Marines actually, what got me to that. And so then, so I couldn't wait. I mean, I signed up when I was 17, it was like right after I finished my junior year of high school.
Same.
And, I had to get I had to get my mom to sign off on the waiver.
Yep.
And my mom didn't want to.
Yeah,
and so,
are you serious?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. My grandfather was telling me, all this, they're going to have you shoveling shit in Okinawa and all that. I did end up in Okinawa, but I wasn't shoveling shit. But, and then they're going to break you horrible. And I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of the idea. I wanted some hardship. I wanted some challenge. And so to the point where we had, 2 Marines show up in their dress blues to kind of convince my mom and all that. It worked. Because she said, look, I can either sign this waiver now, or you can wait until you're 18, do it yourself. I might as well sign it. So she did. And so then right after, like 3 weeks after my dad died and finishing high school, went to the Marines, down to San Diego. And it was funny, I was a real fat, out of shape kid as well. So I lost 60 pounds in boot camp.
Jesus.
Right. Yeah, I know. It was wild. Honestly, I was one of those kids. So for any of the Marines out there who are listening, is they have these very basic standards. And you got to be able to, just to start training at Marine Corps boot camp, you got to be able to do 2 pull-ups. Yeah. I couldn't do shit. Right. I mean, it was just mount the bar. And I'm like, nothing. Right? So then, I can remember this too, because it's what they do. The Marines are great about this. Is they see that you're fat, but they don't want to waste any resources because the Marine Corps loves being frugal. So they issue you PT gear that they know is too small for you, but they know you're going to shrink into it. So you're just busted out of this, the shirt doesn't fit you and your shorts barely fit. And so I'm waddling up to the bar over there, and your head just got shaved, got little patches, and giant drill instructor, sleeve tattoos everywhere. He's like, mount the bar, get something up there. And, I'm kicked in, just couldn't get anything. And I remember he just goes, oh, yeah, you're fucking stellar. Get the fuck off my bar. And it was one of the most, honestly, demoralizing and humbling things that ever happened to me in front of everyone. It's man, it's really good because I think it is really important. And I think that's one of the great things about the military, especially the Marine Corps, for me at least, is you learn to be humbled. And you learn your place within a system, and you don't have getting that agency and leadership and responsibility has to be earned. Yeah. That was huge. So it's and I at Marine Corps boot camp there, because not only that, I don't even get to start training. I have to go what they call the physical conditioning platoon, right? Which is like, it's like fat camp on steroids. And so what they and so you so wow so all the kids you showed up with, they start training, working their way to finishing boot camp. You're stuck there marking time, and all they do is pretty much feed you rabbit food pretty much, and then just work the shit out of you until you can do like 2 or 3 pull-ups or whatever
until you fit in them PTs.
Right, yeah, and then you did it, and so I did that, and I did fine afterwards. Getting through all that. I mean, it works, right? It's the best fat camp ever. It works. And then it was funny, like at Marine Corps graduation, my parents come down and all that. My mom shows up. My dad was gone. My mom, my grandfather, my little brother, who's still active duty now, by the way, but he was like 12 years old at the time. He, my mom, my whole family walked right past me. They didn't even recognize me at all.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was wild. I was like I think I shipped to boot camp at like 248 and not a lean 248. And I left there at like 189, 188 or something like that. And yeah, it was wild. But so did that, and it just kind of like changed my attitude in life on everything. Like it was just like this weird, like hard reset that it did for me. And then, I wanted to get stationed overseas. This is all, keep in mind, this is in 1999. So this is like pre 9/11, peacetime Marine Corps. There was no war. Like we knew like one guy, like we had a couple of guys who were like a couple of the drill instructors in my first unit, like they were Desert Storm, or like, dude, that guy was in Bosnia. He's got a Navy Commendation Medal with a V. Holy shit, right? And or like Somalia and stuff like that. It was really rare. And so then I ended up getting stationed. I wanted to be overseas. They ended up sending me an hour from my house in Washington State. So a lot of folks don't know this, is that there's, I don't know if it's still there. I'm told they have a small contingent there, but at the time they had a company of Marines, it was a company, it was like 300 of us.
Was it Bangor?
At Bangor submarine.
Yeah, Bangor, yeah.
So we were there to guard all the nuclear weapons and all that. And so since I was a reasonably well-behaved kid, I didn't have any police record, didn't get caught smoking pot or drinking underage, nothing like that. So because of that, I was able to get a clearance, and they call the personnel reliability program. And so basically, like, I was, decently behaved kid. So therefore I was able to get into that program, and it was pretty cool. I mean, I was like standing in front of nuclear weapons at the submarine base. At the time, I think it was like the largest nuclear weapons facility in the world, I think. We're thereabouts, if not as close second, maybe to Kings Bay. But, we were there I was a sentry. I was a guard Marine, right?
Were you the guy on the gun? So I did all my flight training. I lived in Olympia for 10 years of my life. My last duty station was Fort Lewis. And then I stayed when I got out. So I did all my flight training up there, and I would fly by Bangor. And I remember, man, it's kind of scary because that's a restricted area by the subboats up there. And you can look out over the right wing if you're flying north, obviously the left wing if you're flying south, and you can see them train the actual gun on the airplane while you're flying by. It's like, if you touch that circle, we're shooting you out of the sky. Were you that guy?
We were one of those guys. We had guard towers there. And you think of it at night too, because the thing is, I didn't know this when I got there. They talked about it, is because at night it looks kind of like an airfield.
It does,
right?
Yeah.
Because there's like what looks all the bunkers, the magazines, the bunkers that store the warheads. They look like hangars at night, especially. And then there's guard towers that look like air traffic control towers everywhere.
Yeah.
So there have been a couple instances where there was like, some guy flying a Cessna had an engine failure and he had to put it down somewhere. And actually, I mean, aside from the Marines that are itching to shoot somebody, right? Aside from that, it's actually like not the worst place to land a plane if you're in trouble.
It's not. And they're actually really accommodating. I've seen that happen. Bangor, McCord Airfield up there, same thing. Yeah. I got to do some low approaches and some, I forget what they call it, when the tower actually vectors you in on an ILS, which is really cool at McCord. Because the military is the only ones that have the capability to do that somehow, some way.
Yeah.
It's really weird. But I feel your pain moving up to Seattle, because Seattle turned into a hellhole. I left in COVID because I just couldn't do it. God, yeah. I couldn't do it ananymore. I was there for the Chaz Chop bullshit. Seattle.
I went out one time, actually. I went and looked. Sketch, dude. So, I went up there to visit my stepfather at the time, who was dying of cancer at that time, and we're like, I got to see this.
Yeah, right.
So we didn't go. We went inside briefly, as my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time. Just walked around a little bit, and basically looking how we looked. We got a couple of stairs, and also we didn't like there's some Antifa type guys, right, or somebody that were there, were masked guys. And the thing is like, at least at the time, Washington State's an open carry state, so they're like Antifa dudes rolling with ARs. Yep. And like, I don't know that guy. I don't trust that guy. These are not our friends. I'm like, let's just we saw it. It looked like, honestly, it looked like a really shitty, like third world farmers market.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, just an open air drug farmers market with everybody. Remember, they in the middle of the street put sod down and tried to grow a garden. And
I walked right past that.
What the fuck is going on here? Why? It's a shame, man, because Seattle's such a beautiful city. It's actually one of the coolest cities I've ever been in, and the Pacific Northwest in general is. I tell people this all the time. It sucks for like 8 months out of the year, but the 4 months that you get a summer, there's no other place that's as beautiful as that place when the sun's
great.
out.
Yeah, this time of year is about it.
It's amazing.
Right? This time of year, it's great. Same story for like San Francisco.
Yeah.
A beautiful city that just got wrecked by horrific management, corruption, drugs, all of it. Yeah. It's terrible.
But I want to take a step back and ask you, before you shipped, losing your father, was there any moment where you kind of were like going to go back on your decision to join, or did that fuel your decision to join even more? It fueled my decision, actually, because my dad was super proud of me. For joining, which is really funny because my dad was like a druggy hippie, right? And so he like literally burned his draft card, right? Like he was Vietnam era, right? He just like burned his draft card, moved to San Francisco, did a ton of drugs, that whole movement that he, Woodstock, all that crap. That was his whole vibe back then. And then in true fashion, then he became one of like the hippies who turned into the yuppies, and then became a pretty successful guy in his career with insurance and everything, and made a bunch of money and, wore a tie and all that. And then kind of devolved later. But no, he was super proud of it. He would like brag to people, and it made almost the point where it was making me embarrassed. He's bragging so much. He's joining the Marines. And I'm like I'm the kind of a fat piece of shit right now at the time, And no, he was incredibly proud. So in my mind, it was like, no, I was fulfilling something. That's awesome.
So that he was proud of me to have done. And he even said like he kind of was. And in his later years, he said that he really regretted it. He felt it was really stupid. And I asked him, why did you like burn your draft card and like be a hippie and do all that stuff? And he was straight up. He just said, that's where the girls were.
I mean, you can't really.
I'm like, okay. I heard that.
I was going to say, you can't really argue with that.
Yeah, exactly. That's where all the girls were. I was like, all right. He's honest.
The fair point. Now, man, your career, you did a lot of different things in your career. So walk us through, you came in as a Marine infantry guy, pulling security at Bangor on the nukes. And then where did you go from there? Because ultimately you ended up Navy EOD, playing with bombs. I have a lot of respect for you guys, man. I had the pleasure of my second deployment, which was my 16-month deployment, falling under each of 1st, 2nd, 5th Marines. So the 1st, 2nd, 5th MEF over 16 months. Which meant we got to work with the Navy corpsmen, who are, in my opinion, the best medic on the planet, period, hands down. But also the Navy EOD, you guys, man, it's like our Army EOD guys, they're phenomenal. They're great at what they do. But they have a different set of rules that they have to play by, and it's kind of stupid. Whereas I noticed the Navy EOD guys, you guys just don't give a fuck, like at all. It's like, we're going to get this out, like, with Army EOD, it's like you call them and you're in for like a 6-7 hour fucking ordeal, right? With Navy EOD, it's like as soon as they get here, it's 5 minutes and we're done. We're on our way.
Well, I'm glad you had that experience because I know other folks that also didn't like having to wait around for EOD. But,
well, I mean, there's a right. So the hindsight's 2020. I understand it took 7 or 8 hours at points because there's only so many EOD guys and we're finding so many IEDs, right?
Right.
But anytime we called the Navy, it was just such a way more smooth process. There was no bullshit involved. It was like, where's the bomb? Okay, let's go take care of this. Okay, you guys are good to go, right?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think like Big Army has some issues with those sorts of things,
Yeah, they do. Big time.
Yeah. So where I found my way in that is because, and actually when I was a kid, I actually wanted to be in the Marines, but I actually really wanted to be an officer because, again, when I was a teenager, I read books about it. There's a guy named James Webb who later became Secretary of the Navy, and he was actually a senator, a Democrat actually, but from Virginia. He's a Democrat senator because he was against the Iraq War, even though his son served there. So, but anyways, he wrote a book called A Sense of Honor, right, which is a novel about the Naval Academy and the Vietnam War. He wrote another book called Fields of Fire. It's a novel, and it won a bunch of awards and all that. And then it's actually still even like required reading for the Marine Corps reading list. So it's kind of meant to be like, you should read this book, and you need to be like the main character, right? You need to be like, that's a proper infantry officer, right? Junior officer. And so like, that's how I thought. So I knew I didn't have a chance of getting in the Naval Academy in high school. Again, my grades weren't great, out of shape, didn't have it together. So I knew that like, hey, well, if I enlist, I've got a shot at least. And if not, got my foot in the door, and hey, at least I'm in, right? One in the Marines at least. So then I worked really hard when I was an enlisted guy. So, we were, again, pre 9/11, there weren't really deployments. I was a garrison unit. And so I would go to school at night. There was like they had on base, community college had classes on base at night. So I took in a couple math classes, a couple English classes, took SAT prep courses, all that stuff, and then applied to the Naval Academy from the enlisted side. I was a good Marine. I did my job. I was, and I stayed at, one thing I learned, if you're a junior enlisted guy, like 85% of being a stellar junior enlisted guy is you're not in trouble.
Yeah, 100%. Right? Yeah, just don't get a DUI, don't get in fights, don't get arrested for fighting, don't be drunk in public.
Don't drink, don't touch drugs, keep your hands to yourself.
Yeah.
And and all of a sudden, like, you're top tier. Because it's like, are you a problem for us? No. Oh, you're fantastic then, right? You do your job, you show up on time, in a clean uniform, shaven and sober, and everyone thinks you're fantastic.
Yeah.
Right?
I imagine your days were a lot like mine as a young infantry guy. If you were going to fight, the whole platoon better be fighting, and then you're out of trouble. But if it's onesies and twosies, we're going to hem you up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. And so I applied to the Naval Academy from there, and got a letter of recommendation from my CO, my XO, and I got picked up for what's called the Naval Academy Prep School, which is in Newport, Rhode Island, and it's a year-long crash course in like college prep. So it was honestly some of the hardest academics I ever did, like ever, because it was like 2 hours a day of math, an hour of English, an hour of chemistry, an hour of physics. That's all you did. You did that, and then you'd work out. If you were playing sports, you play sports or whatever, and it was like a very regimented, structured time. But it's like and there's like all the instructors there to only teach. They had teachers there at night who all they did was work at night. They followed, because we're all in the same curriculum. So they follow the curriculum, like, hey, you got an exam tomorrow, you got a quiz tomorrow. All right, we're going to help you with this. We'll go through it. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you have you don't need to be a genius to get through that course. If you have a brain that works and you're disciplined and you work hard and you do everything you're supposed to, like, you'll pass, right? And I passed, but like not by a lot, but I passed. And so from there, then I got into the Naval Academy. And so while you're at that prep school, you're still enlisted. So even though like you had to wear a Navy uniform, I was still a corporal or then later a sergeant in the Marines. But you're getting ready to go to the Naval Academy, and then what they do is once you go to Naval Academy, I was discharged from the Marine Corps and entered as a midshipman in the Navy. And then I started the Naval Academy, and that's where I started. That's where all of a sudden my life started to take a little bit of a turn, because I started to have a little too much fun as a midshipman.
Of course you did.
I treated the Naval Academy like a military school. I treated it like it was a civilian college, because it was like, all right, I was able to get by in class, even though I actually did pretty shitty. I probably could have done better academically. The military stuff, especially coming from the Marines, all the military stuff, the inspections, the uniforms, the marching, all that was second nature to me by then. It didn't faze me a bit.
Yeah.
What was hard is the academics. Right. That was really hard. And so I struggled with that, but then also like all of a sudden, when I was like the nerdy kid, didn't get any girls, wasn't the cool kid, all of a sudden, I'm one of the cool kids now, right? And I just had a little too much fun, had too many friends, and was a little social. And so I ended up having to get in trouble, mostly for like drinking when I wasn't supposed to, or not being where I'm supposed to be, stuff like that, pretty much. And then I had to stand tall before the man on a couple occasions, either a Navy captain or a Marine colonel in 06. And I had the deputy commandant of midshipmen, who was a Marine full bird, who was basically there. It's a little performative, but it's like, it's like going like an Article, it's not Article 15, but it's like one.
Yeah.
It's like going up to NJP. It's one of those things where it's like, there's a bunch of senior officers, sitting at a long table. they're sitting, you're standing, they have a cup of coffee, you don't have a cup of coffee, they ask you questions, you don't get to ask any questions, kind of a thing. And then, I spent a lot of time on restriction. In fact, I was so bad that I actually had to go, not after I didn't even make it past or the colonels or the captains. I had to go straight to the superintendent, who's a 3-star admiral, and had to explain to him why he should let me graduate, which was not the most fun conversation.
It's almost one of those situations where you're like, I don't have a really good reason why you should let me graduate, other than because I want you to let me graduate. I
don't know. I thought about what I did, and I'm sorry. I don't know. And
I want to ask you real quick. Yeah. Do you think being a non-commissioned officer, corporal, and a sergeant in the Marine Corps before you started the academy was beneficial to you? Just in that, I always think of service academies. I wouldn't have done well in a service academy. It's 4 years of military before the military, and I could see how coming in as a fresh teenager out of high school, that's an adjustment period. But you're telling this story like I had a little too much fun at the Naval Academy, and I've never heard anybody say that about a service academy because they come right out of high school, not having some life experience being in the military before. I feel like you're kind of an outlier. So were there things that you were advantageous to you just knowing you're a non-commissioned officer, but then also obviously there's the flip side of this. You were standing in front of the 3-star.
Yeah. So no, you're absolutely right. Cause you have a huge, and there's one thing that I told people when I was a junior and a senior, and we see the other freshmen who are coming in who are prior enlisted as well. And we kind of pull them aside like, hey guys, check this out. Right. And kind of give them advice to things that I learned. They told me is, you will have a huge advantage over your peers when you show up there. Because again, these kids come right out of high school, know nothing about the military. What they tell them at the Naval Academy is pretty much all they know about the military. And you come from, the operational forces, you're actually doing something, the real military, so to speak. And so you're going to have a huge advantage over them for about a month. And then they catch up. And one thing I got to say, man, is I know a lot of people love to shit on the ring knockers and all that. And a lot of times there's good cause. Don't get me wrong. But they are some really smart folks. The kids that I was there with, not just good students, they had their shit together in a lot of ways. And these are kids who could have easily gotten into Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, any of those schools. And on top of that, they're all in really good shape. I thought I was, by the time I spent time in the infantry, I was running, doing all this stuff. These guys, a lot of them they're D1 athletes. Right. They're so it was exceptionally high quality. Well-rounded people. Yes, there's outliers, there's exceptions, there's some dirtbags always. But by and large, these guys are strong, they could run, they had their head on straight, they knew what they're doing, and they went out and did really well. Now, there are some phenomenal officers that come out of the service academies. There are some shit officers that come out of the service academies, but you can say the exact same thing about OCS and ROTC, right? It's just, it's kind of what that is. But you're right. I had a little bit too much fun because this part's easy. That's fine. I can skirt these rules. And a lot of times I could. Sometimes I didn't.
Well, just a couple of years as an infantryman, it's no different in the Marines than it is in the Army. You're a seasoned professional partier and you know how to do PT hungover, right? That's a huge advantage. I don't care where you're at. Learning how to operate like that, that's, Monday morning, 8-mile formation runs, and you just smell the alcohol coming out of everybody. 100%. And everybody's puking by the end of this run. It's coming.
When you're 20, 21, 22 years old, you can do that.
Yeah, 100%.
I can do this in my life now. If I don't drink nearly as much as I used to, near a fraction. But if I had 3 or 4 beers one night, and then I were to go run,
not happening. No,
not happening. It is. But yeah, man. But So it was very advantageous, but also a lot of times they really do look up to you. Your peers look up to you. Is this what it's like? They always want to ask you questions, and so you kind of have to learn to be a little real because it is still very much the same time. You're in a fishbowl. You're the ivory tower. You're 35 minutes from Washington D.C. So you always got admirals and generals showing up. They look at you as their pretty little toy soldiers, right? And so it was. So it was very much a display. It's parades and marching and this and this, and it's all this nice tradition, which actually is after a while, you're okay, this is actually kind of nice that we have this, but it sucked being in it at the time. But honestly, I had a really fun time. Unlike my friends, I got a lot of buddies of mine, Army friends, who went to West Point. Nobody looks back on it fondly. Nobody I know went to West Point looks back on it fondly. Most of my friends and I, we all do. I think that is just a cultural thing because the Navy, unlike, I think, more so than the other services, the Navy has a culture of socializing, right? Where it's like, partying. So, for example, this is kind of weird history thing, but you might have heard there's a very famous Royal Navy admiral called Lord Nelson, Horatio Nelson, who won the Battle of Trafalgar, did all this stuff, right? But the thing is, he lost an arm, then he lost an eye, and then he ended up dying in the Battle of Trafalgar, even though he won the battle. But he was killed in action, and so he's still looked at. He's almost like a damn near like the George Washington of the Royal Navy, right? At Trafalgar Square. I mean, he's very much lionized. But the way that he ran his ships and his Navy, that the United States really followed in a lot of ways, is he says, I want to eat and drink with my officers, right? In the sense where when all of his captains of his ships, every night they'd have him get on a boat and come to the flagship, and we're having dinner together. So the idea behind that is we are eating together, we are drinking together, and that way, I'm getting to know you, right? Where I know you, so that when we're out there, we don't have radio. They didn't have radios back then, so I know how you're thinking. I know what you're going to do. If you see the enemy doing this, I know and I told you what to do. I know how you're going to think, and you know how I think. So and they actually call it Nelsonian leadership. So there's this party attitude that we kind of had, that we've always had. And also given the fact that the Naval Academy, unlike West Point or Air Force Academy, is in the middle of a cool historic party drinking town called Annapolis, Maryland. Downtown Annapolis, I could walk. This is part of the reason probably I had gotten so much trouble was I could walk out of my room in Bancroft Hall, which is the dormitory here at the Naval Academy. I could walk out of my room and be in a bar in 7 minutes. I clocked it, right? It's better than most colleges, right? I'd walk out of my room, and I'd be inside Armadillos, which is nearby bars right there. And it was a going out and drinking town. So whereas at West Point, it's up in this ugly German castle. It looks like Frankenstein's castle. It's beautiful, don't get me wrong. It's really nice, but it's in a tiny little podunk town. There's nothing there. Yeah. Air Force Academy, you got to drive 20 minutes just to get to the gate, to get out into Colorado Springs, which is kind of a Bible thumper kind of a town, right? So it's very, very socially conservative in that sense, right? Mm-hmm. Where Annapolis is just a fun little party town. So I think that's some of the difference that the Navy has. But so anyways, I had a lot of fun, but because I had so much fun, I did not have a very high class rank. So even though they have a summer training, they've got a mini OCS they put you through the summer after your junior year called Leatherneck. It's at Quantico. And it is like a little OCS they put you through, and I did really well in that, really well. All the other officers there said, my little cohort had 80 midshipmen in it. I was ranked number 2.
Yeah, you're finally back to the tactics.
Yeah, no, back to that,
right? Fuck this book shit. Let's show you what real being a.
Yeah. They made us run a Marine Corps PFT run, 3-mile run. I run it under 20 minutes, and I sit there smoking a cigarette while other guys come across. Can't do that today.
No.
So, but I did really well on that. I taught guys, hey, how to be aggressive, how to do things, and I did really well. So I got what they call, and it goes into your record as a midshipman. It's highly recommended for a Marine Corps commission. Well, the Naval Academy has the final say. So they're like, okay, cool. He was highly recommended, but he's still on restriction. He's ranked 5th from the bottom of his class of 1,000. He's constantly trying. He had to go see the admiral. So appreciate your input, Marine Corps, but we're not gonna let him get a Marine Corps commission. So which is odd because the Marine Corps wanted me, but Naval Academy has the final decision.
They're looking at you like this is what we want in a Marine right here.
So instead, I got I went to called surface warfare, which is kind of like with driving ships, right? Which is the default. It's considered the default for a lot of folks to go to the Naval Academy. You don't know what you want. You're not very competitive. It's usually because it's the fastest way out. You can go in that, and then you don't have any additional commitment. Like guys who want to become pilots, you got to it's so you can get what they call it 5 and dive. You can do 5 years and get out, right? So the thing is, though, okay, well, that was kind of a hit to my ego and my whole mindset. It's oh man, I'm becoming a surface warfare officer, which is kind of known for being not the best community as from a corporate culture standpoint, let's say. But I leaned into it. I got the third to last available ship, which is basically an old amphibious ship called the USS Kearsarge out of Norfolk. Virginia, which is kind of considered like all the kids who got pretty good grades, were at the top. They literally like line you up in class order for ship selection, and they make a whole thing. It's like a party, and they like play the music and like, oh, he's ranked number 1 in his class. What ship he's going to pick? They got a board with all the billets, and you literally go up there and pick like, yay, I'm going to go to this ship, and yay. And most of the kids know what they're doing. They want to pick the shiny new destroyer out of Hawaii or San Diego. Who can blame them? Right. But by the time I get there, all that's available are amphibious ships out of Norfolk, which is like considered the least desirable. I went to it, had the time of my life, man. I had a great time there. I actually leaned into it and I embraced it and I did really well. But I knew that this is probably not what I want to do forever. So I looked at like, okay, what is out there that like is similar to the Marine Corps? And there's 2 things, SEAL and EOD, right? I had a bunch of my buddies who are SEAL, still do. Got a lot of SEAL friends. I just didn't like the mindset, the mentality. Everything was like a pissing contest constantly and like not in a fun way, and you can see that these days now. It's really gotten bad with all the podcast crap,
I think it's a SEAL thing.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, I feel bad because I got a lot of my SEAL buddies who are not public people at all who despise that shit.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, because, I mean, and so I make this joke when a lot of people don't know what Navy EOD is, especially folks who haven't spent time in the military. Like Navy EOD, is that kind of like the SEALs? Because it's like you dive and jump, you blow things up. That's like the SEALs. I'm like, We actually had the same origins in World War II, like the underwater demolition teams, but in the 60s, they kind of split up into, we had the UDT underwater demolition teams and EOD. And then in the 60s, they created the sea, air, land teams, SEAL teams. And then, that's kind of where all that started. But we had the same origins. But I would say to people, kind of as a joke, but not really joking, I said, the main difference between an EOD guy in the Navy, a Navy EOD guy and a Navy SEAL is, one, I haven't written any books. I do not have a podcast. I am not a Fox News contributor. And I'm not running for Congress. So, because, and I even joke with Brendan, one of the guys that worked with me for a couple of years, who, he's at SEAL Team 6, knew all those guys, like all the ones you hear about in the news. He knew them well. He had thoughts on all those guys, but I even joke, I'm like, bro, you're not a real Navy SEAL. You haven't even written a fucking book.
Right.
When's the last time you were on a podcast?
Right.
Call yourself a Navy SEAL, right? I said fuck around with them, but I mean, a lot of them are just really great dudes, but the mentality was not the same. So I knew a little bit about Navy EOD, but then a detachment, EOD detachment came on board my ship. We're out training. And I just started talking to them, started working out with them, and just get to know them. And it was like, what I loved about it, it's a complete comedy show the entire time. It's just like some of the funniest dudes I've ever known. To this day, I still keep in touch with. It's just like, you guys could have had a career in stand-up, right? It was amazing, but they're still in great shape, smart, knew when to fuck around, knew when to take things seriously, very casual, big boy rules, first names, hands in their pockets, whatever.
I'm so jealous. Yeah. Hands in your pocket. You give me 30 pockets on a uniform and tell me I can't put my hands in them. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, just call your boss dude, whatever. It was great. And so then I applied to that, and then I got accepted in that. So I graduated the academy in 06, got accepted in the EOD in late 08, and then went to dive school in 09. And then went through Navy dive school, which is fun. They just kind of, try to drown you for 2 months. And then, and I was always decent in the water, but I was not like some like D1 swimmer, like some of the guys I went to school with who were in my class, like they're, D1 swimmers, D1 water polo, right? They're good. But I was a decent swimmer, a couple of water, did well in that, then went to EOD school. That was a really tough course. It was like, what's interesting is like the Navy EOD training, they kind of say, look, it's probably the second most physically demanding next to like BUDS and SEAL training, pretty close though. And probably the second most academically demanding in the Navy next to Navy nuclear power, right? And it was like, and what I love about it is like, it was a bunch of like, everyone we knew were like a bunch of like very athletic, funny nerds, right? Who were like really technical, good with their hands. A lot of guys were really successful as EOD guys, like in their previous life. They were plumbers, electricians. They were, or one like if you're really good with EOD, especially with all that stuff. If like guys were like installing car stereos,
it's the blue collar jobs, man.
Yeah. It really is a lot of them. Now, I still learned that wasn't me. I picked it up and I was like confident, but I mean, some of these guys, whoa, how'd you figure that out?
Right.
Holy crap, that's awesome, man. And so I did that, and then I ended up getting stationed. I was thinking I was going to get sent to San Diego or Virginia Beach. Those are two big hubs, kind of like the SEALs. Their main hubs are San Diego and Virginia Beach, with a couple exceptions. I got sent to EOD Mobile Unit 5 out in Guam. And, it wasn't really my intention. I wasn't really planning on getting posted overseas, but I spent 4 years there. And honestly, at the time of my life, I mean, it was really far away. People don't realize how far away Guam is. I mean, it's a 7-hour flight from Hawaii.
Yeah.
So it's like the closest big city to Guam is Manila, Philippines, right? Like that's your closest big city. So, but we were out there in the Pacific. So what I loved about that was like, especially I was there from 2011 to the end of 14, beginning 11 to the end of 14. And the thing is like, that was when we're trying to do, and we're still trying to do that pivot to the Pacific, right? Where it's like, hey, we're getting out of the mountains, we're getting out of the desert, and we're going to focus on the Pacific. And now still, we're out of the mountains, we're mostly out of the desert, and we're trying to stay out of Eastern Europe. God. And which I think so far we're successful, but we really need to focus on that whole problem out there, and mostly it has to do with China, to a lesser extent North Korea. And so I got to do some really cool stuff. I mean, that was fun, like not like kinetic stuff, but like, and I did one tour while I was during my time in Guam. I did a tour with Army Special Forces, so I got to go through an incredible training pipeline for Navy EOD techs who are getting attached to soft units. So I got to go through. It was a 1.5 year long course where we did advanced free fall. That was cool. Got to learn, like advanced free fall stuff. Like I did a 24K nighttime high altitude high opening onto an unknown DZ. That was, I mean, it sounds really cool, but doing it sucks balls. It's cold as shit up there.
And it's dark.
At altitude, and then it's 90 degrees when you land because you're in Arizona at night in the summer. Yeah. And then, but we did that, what was really cool is we went through the counter-WMD pipeline. So this was meant, I learned this, and this is where like a lot of we did kind of direct support for the tier 1 units, which is, a lot of folks don't know this, but let's say some like action hero movie type scenario happens where a bad guys try to sneak a nuke into either the United States or one of our allied countries, right? Well, it's going to be a Navy EOD tech attached to SEAL Team 6 that's going to be the guy to take care of it. There's an entire EOD squadron at SEAL Team 6. A lot of people don't know that. So they're like, the COs as a Navy EOD 05, and there's all the detachments attached to them, and then they attach to the red, blue, gold, silver squadrons, and they got some guys in black squadron as well, do all that stuff. And so our main job is I was what's called the SIF at the time. So now I think they call it the CRIF, Crisis Response Force. At the time they called it the Commanders in Extremis Force. And what that was meant to be is we were like a counterterrorism unit, region specific. Mm-hmm. So we were meant to be the U.S. PACOM commanders, like in pocket counterterrorism unit. So you had 2 troops of Army Green Beret, Army SF guys who had been through Sephardic, which is like an advanced shooting course, and a Navy EOD detachment. I was the OIC of the EOD detachment. We had a couple of PJs, a couple of CCTs, and that was like our little group. And we were meant to be like on call in the event some major terrorism incident happened in the Pacific. Well, during my time, it didn't happen. It doesn't really happen too often. I mean, I think in early 2000s, they had some stuff in the Philippines, some hostage situations they dealt with there. But our main job as an EOD, wasn't just the IEDs, it was a counter-WMD thing. So I got to spend like 3 weeks at Los Alamos National Laboratory, 3 weeks at Sandia National Lab. Like, dude, I got to hold plutonium in my hand. I got the tour of like where they make nuclear weapons. I had all the Los Alamos scientists like tell us like, hey, okay, here's how this shit works. And then the whole scenario is, all right, let's say some bad guys were trying to sneak a nuke into like Australia or Japan or maybe all the way to the States. It's probably going to smuggle it somewhere through Asia or somewhere through Southwest Asia, maybe steal it from the Indians or the Pakistanis or the Russians, smuggle it through, and they probably put it on a boat in like Bangladesh or something, and then put it on a boat and sail it to wherever, right? There's been action movies like this is like the Sum of All Fears kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is like we would try to find that ahead of time. And there's also, I learned, and that's where my eyes got opened up. Well, I can't go into it, but when I got in the read-in, on like all the intelligence stuff we do to stop that. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was actually kind of impressive. I was like, oh, the U.S. government's actually pretty good at some things.
So needless to say, you've had a really colorful, you've done a lot of things in your career. We need to move on to the. You're good. No, and it's fascinating, man, because like vicariously, I get to live through you. I mean, my career was long, not long enough, but whatever. I got to do a lot of cool stuff. Sephardic is a really cool course. Let's talk about your transition and actually what you're doing now, because I think there's a lot of factors for you that obviously influence the founding of Miramar Health and all of that. With your dad, kind of, I mean, really taking his own life through overdosing. We see that in a lot of veterans now. We just don't count those in the numbers of suicides, right? Like if you're not putting a gun in your mouth, or you're not intentionally running a car off a bridge or something like that, we don't count those numbers. However, when you start counting alcoholism related suicide, if you will, and drug overdoses, that number doubles, almost triples. Like
it's a blurred line between overdose and suicide, and it's really hard to tell. I agree 100%. No, what got me into it was, I thought about doing something different because, again, like I did all that fun stuff I was talking about, and then I got a staff job because once you get to be like a mid-level officer, it's all desk work from there.
It's over. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're miserable.
And so then I was on a Commodore staff in San Diego. That was an Admiral staff in San Diego. And then I'm like, I want to do something different. So I picked up for an intelligence gig, right? We're called Foreign Area Officers. That's why they sent me to DC for language school. But while I was in San Diego, the Navy made a terrible mistake and they let me go to business school part-time. And that's where my eyes got opened up to like entrepreneurship, the private sector, because something I never really gave any thought to. But when I was in San Diego, I was like, now's a good time to do some graduate education. So they sent me to, while I was in San Diego, a part-time MBA at UCLA. And great program, really enjoyed it. I mean, I learned a fair bit, but honestly, what you really learn is just like the network of all that and like seeing what other people are doing. So I looked at a lot of these folks and I'm like, I'm not super smart, but like I'm at least as smart as that guy over there. And that guy has like way more control over his life, doing an impact in certain ways. Sometimes it's business. Sometimes some guys are doing some pretty interesting, noble things. And he makes a ton more money. And like he's got control of life. That's interesting. And I'm stuck here going from desk job to desk job. Not really, I feel like I'm just a cog in a machine. I'm not really doing anything meaningful. So then what happened was then they sent me to language school. And then my job, I was supposed to go back to Southeast Asia. They're going to send me to Bangkok and Singapore for a few years. That job got turned off. So then they're like, you're just going to go to Pentagon again. I'm like, okay, I'm out. I'd already fulfilled my obligations. Pissed off a lot of people in the Navy, right? Because they thought that I was, going to stick around. I'm like, nope. So then I got out. And I decided to get out in 2017. So I already started making plans. And I was thinking about what to do. My first job was just a defense contractor. Like I was actually working for, it's actually an Israeli-American firm selling combat diver equipment to my friends, essentially. Not a bad job. It paid okay, but there's no real,
Why do we all go to contracting jobs when we get out? Every single.
I had a special operations background.
Yeah.
It's
the thing to do. Yeah.
It paid well, but I could see that like if I stayed in this job for 10 more years, I'd be doing the same thing and making marginally more money. I'm like, nah. So I spent a lot of time thinking about like, okay, what the hell am I going to do with myself here? And then I thought about my dad a lot, and I knew that was something that was a huge need for. And there's a lot of problems in the mental health and addiction treatment industry. So like, okay, if we can do this well and do it right, that could be something. Not only could it be something that like actually helps a lot of people, it's good business, right? And also I looked on the veteran side of things. And I'll tell you what, man, I'm sure you could probably say the same. I know like 3 times as many friends of mine have died from suicide and addiction than to Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Taliban combined.
It's why I started all this, Tom, because I got sick of I would get at one point 4 or 5 messages on my phone to somebody else that I had served with that had taken their own life. And then I would go to the Facebook veteran groups and everybody would be like, we've got to figure out how to stop this. We've got to figure out how to stop this. But nobody gets off their ass and actually tries to do anything that makes a difference. And look, man, I can't be sure that this podcast is making a difference. I think that it absolutely is, just based on data that I've collected since I've been doing it for a year. Calls that I just had a call this morning. Somebody follows my content, listens to the show, and he's like, it helps me incredibly. Right. So I at least just need to get off my ass and do something, you know?
Dude, that's your W, man. Because one thing that I know is that me, and probably not you either, or a lot of people as individuals, are going to solve the veteran addiction suicide crisis, or the addiction suicide crisis writ large, right? That's among all Americans, especially men, right? But the thing is, it was like, but for veterans, and you know, itself. So it's like, okay, look, I know I'm not going to solve this myself. No. I'm not going to change the world, but if we can change the world of this guy, that guy, this person, that person, and their families, those are all W's. And we're going to rack up W's.
Well, and so, even more into that, it's like I have a voice now, and I'm getting to the point where you can't ignore what I have to say, because it resonates with our community, and then that gets the attention of some people who have the attention of some other people, and then before you know it, I'm speaking for myself here. I have a real opportunity here in the very near future to take all the transcripts from this podcast, all the 150 plus veteran transition stories, the things that they went through, and stand in front of the Secretary of the VA and say, hey, let's change transition at a fucking policy level. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
let's talk after this.
Yeah, because
the thing is like, and then we got the VA contract. Yeah. And now I've had to deal with the fact that the VA as an organization, despite what the leadership wants and is trying to do, as an organization, I don't know if you know this, the VA is the second largest agency in the federal government.
Yeah, I know.
Did you know that?
I do.
Second EOD. Here's a fun one. Is, and you may know this, but maybe your listeners don't, is that how many employees do you think are in the VA?
Oh, God. There's so many. Over 1 million?
No, well, not that many, unfortunately, but it's 480,000.
Okay, so 500,000.
Yeah, close to 500,000. And this is, now granted, they've done some reduction in force, but it's still a shit ton of people. The VA has more employees than the United States Army has soldiers, dude. Right? I mean, it's insane, right?
But yet we still can't get shit accomplished in a timely fucking manner. Tell me how that makes sense. It's all red tape.
And a lot of that comes down to is that a bureaucracy, large bureaucracies like the federal government, or like name any giant federal agency, it's become the self-licking ice cream cone where its real purpose is its own existence, right? And so and I'm not attributing this to individuals, certainly not the boots on the ground at the deck plate level, certainly not them. Those are actually, by and large, those are phenomenal people. They deserve medals and parades for themselves. I mean, really. But like, as this huge organization, right, its biggest priority is itself. So now the thing is, though, is that the VA is almost completely, when it comes to inpatient mental health addiction treatment, right, they're almost completely overbooked. And the problem is they are scared. They are allergic to what's called community care. Community care was created in the Mission Act under the first Trump administration, which is designed to give veterans choice in their care, where, hey, if there were not options available within the VA, or the veteran decides in their best interest, they could go out in town, like TRICARE, just like TRICARE, right?
I love community care. I'm a beneficiary of community care for some serious surgeries that I've had, and I get to go over to Orlando Health, and they're the best surgeons in the country as far as I'm concerned. So leveraging community care is great. I'm so glad that it exists, but I do wish that it was easier to access, because
oh yeah, and the thing is like you know, like I said, you're in the Central Florida area, so that VA is phenomenal, right? I've heard the great things. Not the case. You know, your mileage may vary depending on where, you know,
right?
And so the thing is, I'm not going to name names, but there's some VAs that are great. There's some that need to be nuked from orbit, and because if you worked with one VA, you've only worked with one VA. But a lot of them don't like community care because they look at it as a threat to themselves and their budget. It's very similar. Actually, I had a congressman explain this to me. He said this, and I'm like, that's a perfect analogy, and I took it and run with it. Is think of like the VA as like a struggling public school system that's overbloated with bloat, not very effective. The kids aren't learning. The kids are hardly in their seats. It costs a shit ton of money, and like nothing's getting done. Well, community care are like the charter schools, right? Where basically these charter schools can do arguably a better job for a lot less money and a lot more effective. But then, you know, what does that public school system think of the charter schools? And then what happens if you put the public school system in charge of the charter schools?
Yeah.
How's that going to work?
Yeah.
What does the union think?
Yeah.
Right? because the VA is a unionized organization. So they look at it as a threat in a lot of ways. And so when I testified a couple of years ago in front of House Veterans Affairs Committee, I was really, I had a bunch of big time, big wigs, who run mental health in DC for VA. And in my testimony, you guys can go look it up, where it's like, I go, we're not going to, and I lean back in the middle of it. I lean back. You couldn't quite hear me because the microphone's on, but I'm like, we're not going to, we are your friends. We are your teammates. It's like, help me to help you to help me. You know what I mean? This is we're in this together. Right. And so the problem is, though, what happens, though, is because they're scared to send a lot of folks to community care. They aren't sending nearly as many as they should, because what they do is they put their guys on waiting lists. So if there isn't, if there is not a bed available at a VA facility right away, but there is one at community care right away, they'll put that guy on the waiting list anyways for up to 30 days. I actually had a social worker, a therapist rather, who I know fairly well, who they have a new policy. There's another VA in the Western United States that basically she said that if only the three big VA, the three hospitals in their state, three big ones, only if all three are booked out for 30 plus days would they consider. Now, if you know someone, and I'm sure you have dealt with it, dealt with people who are in an addiction crisis or a mental health crisis, they can't wait 30 days.
They can't really wait another day. Yeah.
Right, a day. And we've had cases, in one case that was kind of well publicized in Arkansas, of the veteran was semi-homeless, addicted, needed help. The VA didn't have any room for him, but community care bed was available right away. They're like, the community care was like, we can have him in our care by lunch, right? And they said no. What they did, they put him in Uber to a homeless shelter to wait out. They sent him to a homeless shelter until then. So we're trying to change that now. Fortunately, with the new VA secretary and President Trump in there, they're trying to actually enforce this now. Problem is, it's like turning around the Titanic. And so my big concern is, despite all the good things that he's being told, I feel that what's actually happening in the field is not reflection of what his actual guidance and policies are for the VA secretary, Doug Collins. So because of that, there's actually a bill in Congress right now, and I feel that he's kind of waiting for Congress to take action, which is never a good idea. It's called the Access Act. Mm-hmm. And what that does, that solidifies and really, it basically just gives more specificity to the Mission Act to require them to actually follow these, to actually follow the guidelines that are supposed to. So, anything your listeners can do, call your congressman, call your senator, tell them to support the Mission Act. It's in Congress right now. It's being deliberated. But if it's passed, it'll. And one thing I said, what's unfortunate, though, is the VA could take unilateral action right now. They don't need to wait for Congress, which I don't understand, but I'll leave it at that. Mm-hmm. Is if they change their policy right away, where they said, hey, veterans got to be placed somewhere in, let's say, 24 hours. If you can't place them in a VA facility in 24 hours, you got to put them in community care, because there's always going to be a community care bed available. The idea is to get them off the X. Dude, get them off the X.
Yep.
Right? And so if you can't do that, because if we actually had that policy, I've said this to the secretary, his office, his people, said to Congress, you will save dozens of veterans' lives within days.
Yeah.
You will save hundreds of veterans' lives within weeks.
Yep.
And part of me, and that's part where I'm getting frustrated. I'm saying this is like big time Trump supporter. I put on fundraisers. I give money. And it's like, and I'm losing my mind. And it's like, why isn't this happening yet?
Well, and I want to highlight why you're saying this will save lives, because I have your schedule for your Miramar Health veteran treatment program pulled up right now. I absolutely love what I see here, man. I'm looking Monday through Sunday. I'm looking 7 a.m. start time with med call, breakfast, self-care, and hygiene. Then you go straight into meditation and daily reflections. Makes me so happy, because meditation is a free skill that is incredibly helpful to healing and getting over the stuff. And then you go at 10:30 right into trauma recovery and relapse prevention. Trauma recovery is not something that we ever talk about or is ever addressed in any part of the transition process out of the military whatsoever. It's just figure it out on your own. A lot of us carry the stigma of, I'm sure you saw it in your career because we're kind of old guys now. You may be a little bit older than I am because you were earlier, but I joined in 03, was out in 2015. I watched careers get ruined for going to get mental health help as an infantryman. It's sad. And then you go straight into med call and lunch. So I assume, that's controlling medicine, living in balance. That sounds incredible. I can only imagine what you're teaching in that course. And then I see 3 to 5 p.m., 2 hours of fitness intervention, because fitness is the first thing that we all abandon when we get out. We stop doing PT, and it is detrimental to our health moving forward. I gained 100 fucking pounds, man. I lost 100 pounds in a year after my ayahuasca adventure, and fitness is now, it's the first thing I do every morning. 4-mile walk at a pretty incredible pace. I do 4.1 miles in about 58 minutes. So moving pretty quick. I don't run anymore. I wasn't built to run. Fuck that. Then I lift 3 to 5 times a week, just depending on time and all of that. But I think fitness intervention, it's incredible that you built that in there, particularly right in the middle of the day. Like, you need to be doing this. Then you have med call dinner, personal time, 12-step meeting, man. We're getting them out of addiction. Like, and you're introducing them to, I assume your 12 steps follow the AA 12 steps, which is 100% a belief in a higher power. Spirituality is absolutely something that is necessary for you to overcome all of the shit that you dealt with in the military. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. It doesn't have to be a religious thing. You don't have to be trapped in the religious construct, but you do need some kind of belief in a higher power, and that really jumpstarts your healing journey. And then you've got personal time, medications, more personal time, and sleep, and this repeats 7 days a week. This is amazing.
No, thanks, man. I appreciate it. One thing I'll say on the fitness side of things, that was one thing that I made a point of when I got out. Like, also because I felt like as an EOD guy, I had a reputation to maintain, right? We're not, we don't have too many fat guys. We try to maintain that. And then also, I'll say this much is that, again, I'm not a clinician. I don't pretend to be one, but I still I believe that, like, the best antidepressant in the world is a barbell.
It's so true, man. It's so true.
And I say that where it's like, hey, I'm not saying everybody needs to be lifting weights, but I mean that in the sense of, like, strenuous physical activity is what you should be doing, right? Of some sort.
Yeah, Rogan's famous for saying it. Just do something hard, because it makes everything in the rest of your day easier.
100%. And also, one thing I like about it too is I've told this to some of our veterans or patients, again, not as a clinician, just speaking as a layman here, is that one thing I like about lifting in particular, right? And again, I'm not saying these, but you can do the same thing like running or cycling or whatever. Is every time I go to the gym, like, a lot of guys, you either use a logbook or I've got an app, right, or whatever. But what I like, though, is every single day that I go in there, I come out and I'm like, it's measurable. I am measurably better today. Either I got 1 more rep or 5 more pounds, right, or something, and I can show and I can look at it. And I've got my app does little progress where it's like, and it just came up a little bit, like, I'm a little bit stronger today than I was last week. Or sometimes, hey, maybe like I end up having to take a week or 2 off, which sucks. Yeah. But then I'm back in it, and it's like, but what I like is measurable. You can see it.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important part. Now,
I think even if you go and you have a bad day where you didn't have that measurable, you still walk out of there like, I showed up for myself.
Yes.
And I did something. So yesterday was one of those days for me. Yesterday I went to the gym. It was a really quick, like 30-minute workout. Usually mine are 45 to an hour. And it was crowded. I wasn't feeling it, but I knew walking out of there, even after 30 minutes and like 400 calories gone, I was like, I'm better today because I showed up for myself. I may not have performed as good as I did last week. I may not have been as strong. Maybe I didn't hit all those reps, or I didn't get enough working sets in. However, I showed up for myself. I drove my ass here. I participated, and I'm driving my ass home. I felt so much better. And like, I do my lifts in the middle of the day, like you've structured your program. It's a welcome break. It helps me refocus, come back, do work here, record a podcast, or, build a solution in the AI company, or work on the back end of the plant medicine retreat. That break and the showing up for myself, doing something for myself every day is so important.
Yeah, dude. No, 100%. And what I like as well, and even a lot of our guys who come to us, though, not too many, but there's a decent number who are like, also because, of their rough choices they made in their lives, are medically not in great shape. So we try to tailor that to them, because like, look, it's not like everyone's going out running, doing CrossFit or anything. Some guys, it's like, hey, the best we get them to do right now, at least starting out, like, hey, get them to take a walk around the block.
Well, and right? I'll tell you, Tom, when I was 321 pounds at my heaviest, just to give you an idea, I weighed in at 214 this morning. That's
Nice.
how I started losing weight. I switched to intermittent fasting, which works
Yep.
for me. I'm a huge advocate for it. I know it's
Yeah.
not for everybody, and
Sure.
I take it to the extreme. I do really long fasts, and I fast on the average 19 hours a day. It works
Wow.
for me. I'm not telling people that you need to
Yeah.
take it to the level that I have. I just have figured out what works for me. My body responds to it. But
Sure.
I lost my first 70 pounds not with HRT, not with the diet, but just walking, literally just walking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, that's where you can start. And everybody has 2 fucking feet and 2 legs. And, even
Yeah.
the ones that are missing legs, you got a prosthetic because I know that
Yeah.
they took care of you on that. Just walk. Just
Yeah.
walk.
No, 100%. No, just get them out there doing something. It makes such a huge difference. A lot of people don't give enough credit. But no, you're right. It's a big part of my routine. I mean, I'm going to the gym after this.
Yeah.
And yeah, man. No, it's a big deal. And of all those programs we've done, so right now we've touched. Well, I say touched. We've actually treated. I think I got to check our numbers, but I think we're about to hit 1,000 veterans.
Congratulations, man.
And, no, thank you. And when I say that, it's like it's not saying, oh, we just did a counseling session, because the guys, if you're coming to us, you're in a bad way, right? Like, this is not like I say it to a lot of people. They ask, no, I'm not talking about somebody who's like, hey, I'm sad a lot and I think I drink a little too much. I'm arguing with my wife. It's more like I'm near death. I'm worried I'm going to overdose again and die this time, or I'm facing prison or going back to prison. They've usually lost their families, they've lost their friends, and it's like for sometimes for us, like the idea of success for a lot of these guys is we transition them back towards the VA, or we get them care wherever they are, whatever the situation is for them. And it's like sometimes success means you're alive, you're sober, you've got a job, and you can pay the rent, right? And then it's like, and from there, it's like, okay, maybe you're reestablishing relationships with your family. Maybe you're gaining some healthy friendships, healthy relationships, and like just kind of build from there, man. And it's like sometimes that's success. So, I mean, it's tough for a lot of these guys, but I mean, it's really cool to see some success stories.
Dude, this hour has flown by, Tom. I really appreciate you being here. But for those guys and gals that are at that point, that are listening to this, that are at the end of the rope, have lost everything, how do they find your program? How do they reach out? How do they become a participant in your program? Just let everybody know how they can get in touch with you so they can. I want people to know that there are more resources out there that are not being given to you in a TAP class or an ACAP class, or you're not given time to digest. And it's people like you, it's people like this platform that I'm finding really are genuinely helpful in so many different ways, from just spreading knowledge to a program that they didn't even know existed, that is so structured and focused on the right things that I think it'd be really unlikely that you don't have success with your veterans that come through your program.
No, thanks, man. So one thing I'd say is that, I mean, we're at miramarhealth.com, but what we do is almost entirely our company. We're almost entirely through VA referrals, right? So if somebody, if somebody listening, them or someone close to them is a veteran, needs help, if they're within the VA, they can go to the resource. If they're in the Western United States, so Miramar specifically, but there are plenty of other places that are similar to us. We're one that's exclusively veterans. Some other ones are not, but we're contracted with any VA in the Western United States. That's Pacific time zone, Mountain time zone, plus Texas, Hawaii, Alaska. And so we can take anyone from there. But usually what I recommend is, hey, if they're in the VA system, talk to their VA provider, their PCP, their primary care provider. If they're in really bad shape, they might just have to walk into the ER. I mean, that can happen sometimes. And if they're interested in using Miramar Health, you can use our name and say this is where we are. And then, miramarhealth.com. And we're happy to work, or they can contact us directly and we can coordinate with the veteran and tell them, like, just give them for information. Like, hey, if you want to come to Miramar specifically, you can talk about us to your VA provider, your social worker, your therapist, your primary care provider, and it can go from there.
Brother, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for what you do for the community with Miramar Health and having the foresight to put all this together and just being a decent human trying to help our brothers and sisters, kind of overcome this shit. I really appreciate your time, man. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Tom Sauer from Miramar Health. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Like you said, if you're in a bad way, walk into that ER, drop Miramar Health if you're in that region. If not, I'm sure you can reach out to Miramar. They probably have resources for the East Coast guys like me that I probably don't know about. I'm sure Tom is more than willing to help you find a solution to your problems, because at the end of the day, we just want to see you succeed in life on the other side of the uniform, not destroy it. So, Tom, I really appreciate you being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Sauer. We'll see you guys next week with another awesome episode.
Thank you, Adam.
That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.